Okay, it's Christmas time in Cleveland. Actually, I'm in Rocky River, which is a suburb just west of Cleveland. I'm visiting home, staying at my mom and stepdad's for the holidays. And Smokey is with me. I'm actually walking him as I record this right now. And it's been a really terrific holiday, seeing some family, and I'm going to be revisiting and showing you some places where I grew up, like the house I was born in. Oops, slipped. House I grew up in, where I went to school, that kind of stuff. So it's been a great holiday, Christmas 2010, and we're having a good time. So here we go. Okay, this is the Clifton Road house. This is the house where I was born and lived until I was about 2 or 3. My dad grew up in this house, George Hahn, with his siblings. This belonged to my grandparents, and they sold it to my dad when my mom and dad were married in 1970. And this is where my mother was a widow with 4 kids, and so they moved into this house, and this is where we lived when I was born. And as I said, we only lived here for a few more years until we moved to the next house over on Lake Avenue. But at the time, this house was white and it had black shutters. I guess you'd call this a colonial. But it's big. It's a really nice house in a neighborhood of Lakewood called Clifton Park. And this is Clifton Road. And it was a great place to grow up. Lots of kids, lots of houses, beautiful houses. We're less than a half a mile away from Lake Erie. It's actually behind me, behind this house, like a few blocks that way. And there's a lagoon, and there was Clifton Beach, and it was a great place to grow up. And this was the first house that I ever lived in. So there you have it, on Clifton Road in Lakewood, Ohio. Okay, this is 13845 Lake Avenue. This is where I grew up. My mom and dad bought this house when I was around 2 years old in 1973. And I grew up here. This is where all my childhood memories are. There's the front door there. The walk used to go directly down, like straight down the lawn, but the people who own it now have done something different with it. But there was the living room, the library, my sister's room's upstairs in the front. But this is where I grew up. My room was in the back. It was a 1, 2, 3, 4. It was a 6-bedroom house. It is a big house. Great house to grow up in, and this is where all my childhood memories are. Really good ones. And this is where it all happened, in terms of what I remember growing up. Yeah. And this, my friends, is the address plate that was tacked to the tree, the same one that was there when I lived there. So this address plate at 13845 has been here at least 30-some years. Wow. It was a little shinier when I lived here. I'm standing on the corner of Lake Avenue and Whippoorwill, and this is just down the street from the Lake Avenue house where I grew up. And this is Taft School behind me. This was a public school, kindergarten through 5th grade. And this is where I went to kindergarten. This playground here, there was like a slide, up there and on the playground, and it's where I had my first cigarette. I had Mrs. Nenneman for kindergarten, but she was an old woman, and I think something happened to her because halfway through the year she was replaced by a nice lady named Mrs. Zinzer. And this is where I went to kindergarten. Taft School, Lakewood, Ohio, on the corner of Lake Avenue and Whippoorwill, right behind me. So cool. Okay, this is St. Luke's School, where I went to grade school, 1st grade through 8th grade. Actually, myself and all my brothers and sisters graduated from 8th grade here. 1st grade was Mrs. Velasic, 2nd grade was Ms. Zamina, 3rd grade Miss Blaha, 4th grade Mrs. Butcher, 5th grade Sister Allen, 6th grade Miss Blaha again, 7th grade Mrs. Vandeveld, and 8th grade Mr. Vasel. And directly behind me, I'm pointing at those windows there, was the 1st grade classroom. That was my very first elementary school classroom. That was the front door behind me. And this is St. Luke's School on Clifton Boulevard in Lakewood, Ohio. Okay, I'm on Detroit Road in Lakewood, Ohio, and I'm standing in front of what is now Brinkman Dress Funeral Home. Why am I standing in front of Brinkman Dress Funeral Home? Well, for a time, I don't know the years exactly, but my father's family lived here. It is now a funeral home, but this was their house on Detroit Road. I can't read the address. Well, my aunts and uncles would know. It also happens to be a business that is owned by my sister-in-law, technically my step-sister-in-law. She's a Brinkman, and it's their family business, the funeral home. But my father, the Hahns, lived in this house, and this is the driveway. There's the garage back there. Big garage. This is an old Lakewood home. Grand. There was a ballroom on the top floor. Pretty grand. One of the houses where the Hahn family lived. Again, I don't know the years, but a grand old Lakewood home right there. Awesome. Behind me is St. James Church. St. James is where my dad and I think his brothers and sisters all went to elementary school. This is the church, and I've just heard that the church is now closed. It's not open anymore. It's a beautiful old church. I've been in there for a couple of weddings and a couple of funerals over the years. This was one of the Catholic elementary schools in Lakewood. There was St. Clement's, St. James, and St. Luke's. I and my siblings went to St. Luke's. But they're all closed now because there aren't enough students to warrant the attendance to all of them, so they condensed it all to one place called Lakewood Catholic Academy. But this is St. James. It's a beautiful old building, actually. It is a beautiful church, as churches go. And apparently it's closed now. And then this was the school, St. James School. I remember when I was in Cleveland youth, basketball. We used to have basketball games here when I went to school at St. Luke's. There's a gym inside there. But yeah, that's St. James, where my dad and his brothers and sisters went to school, and there's the church. But not anymore. Okay, it's doubly cold down here. I'm down here on Lake Erie. This is a part of Lakewood where I grew up called Clifton Beach, basically. And behind me is Lake Erie. And a lot of it's frozen. It's really, really cold down here. But there are waves breaking. Rough sea, rough lake. But this is, in the summertime there are picnic tables out here and grills, a lot of barbecuing. If you look down this boardwalk here, that's looking east along Lake Erie. Like if you were in a boat and you were headed that way, you'd go to downtown Cleveland, basically. But down this road, there's like a beach house where you can do private parties and whatnot. It'd be a great place for a Hahn family reunion, quite frankly, because there's a lot of Hahn family history down here at Clifton Beach as well. But if I lived in Lakewood right now, I'd live down here. It's kind of special. It's very postcard-like, and I love boats. I love the water. So this is kind of where it's at for me in terms of where I love to be in Lakewood. That's Clifton Park, man. Look at the lake.